I'm Lieutenant Emily Carter, 26 years old, and I worked my way up from a small-town kid with no safety net to earning my commission in the U.S. military. For years, I sacrificed, working double shifts, paying my own way, and believing my parents were doing their part to help. But on the day of my graduation, when my grandfather asked if the car he'd bought me was still running, and I had no idea what he was talking about, I realized my own father had stolen $50,000 meant for me. That moment changed everything. Have you ever been betrayed or humiliated by the very people you thought you could trust? If so, tell me your story in the comments. You're not alone. Before I dive into what happened, let me know where you're tuning in from. And if you've ever had to stand up for yourself after being wronged, hit that like button and subscribe for more true stories about setting boundaries and reclaiming your worth. What happened next might surprise you. I grew up in a small house on Maple Street, where the paint peeled in the summer and the heat never quite reached the back bedrooms in winter. My parents, Thomas and Linda Carter, worked steady jobs, nothing glamorous, nothing that would ever make us rich, but we were stable. My father managed a hardware store. My mother did bookkeeping for a dental office. We had what we needed, and I learned early not to ask for what we didn't. My grandfather, Henry Whitman, was different. He lived 40 minutes away in a house that didn't feel like it belonged in the same world as ours. He'd built his money slowly, methodically, starting with a small construction business in his 20s and growing it into something substantial by the time I was born. He wore simple clothes, drove a modest car, and never flaunted what he had. But you could see it in the way he carried himself, the quiet confidence of a man who'd earned every dollar and knew its value. I was 8 the first time he told me I could be anything I wanted. We were sitting on his back porch, watching the sun drop behind the trees. I'd mentioned, casually, that I wanted to be a soldier. My father had laughed it off earlier that day, said it wasn't a real plan, that I'd grow out of it. But Henry looked at me seriously. "Then you'll be a soldier," he said. "And you'll be a damn good one." He never dismissed me. That mattered more than I knew how to say. As I got older, the difference between my father and my grandfather became harder to ignore. Thomas Carter was a proud man, but his pride was brittle. He wanted to be seen as successful, as the one in control, but he was always measuring himself against Henry and coming up short. At family dinners, my father would talk over everyone, telling stories that made him sound more important than he was. Henry would sit quietly, smiling, letting him have the floor. I didn't understand it then. I thought Henry was just being polite. My mother was softer, kinder, but she lived in my father's shadow. She smoothed over his rough edges, made excuses when he snapped at someone, redirected conversations when things got tense. "Your father just wants to feel proud," she'd say to me more than once, as if that explained everything. I stopped arguing with her about it. It was easier to just let it go. I worked hard in school. I didn't have a choice, no one was going to hand me anything. I studied late, joined ROTC in high school, kept my grades high enough to earn a partial scholarship to a state university. I wanted to serve. I wanted structure, discipline, a life built on something solid. The military made sense to me in a way nothing else did. Henry saw it. He understood before anyone else that I wasn't just playing around, that this was real. When I got my acceptance letter to the university, he called me that night. "I'm proud of you, Emily," he said. His voice was steady, certain. "You're going to do great things." My father's reaction was different. He smiled, said congratulations, but there was something strained in it. He made a comment about how expensive college was, how hard it would be, how I'd need to be smart about money. I told him I'd figure it out. I always did. Henry started sending checks during my freshman year. Small amounts at first, 200 here, 300 there, meant to help with books, groceries, gas. I never saw them. My father would intercept the mail, tell me he'd taken care of it, that I didn't need to worry. I'd thank him, assume he deposited the money into my account, and then wonder why my balance never seemed to match what I expected. I worked 2 jobs that year. I waited tables at a diner near campus and cleaned offices on weekends. I was exhausted most of the time, running on coffee and 4 hours of sleep, but I told myself it was temporary. I told myself I was building something. At Thanksgiving, my father sat at the head of the table and talked about how much he was doing for me, how he was helping me get through school, making sacrifices so I wouldn't have to struggle. I looked at my mother. She nodded along, smiling. I looked at Henry. He was watching my father with an expression I couldn't quite read. Later that night, Henry pulled me aside. "You doing okay?" he asked. "You look tired." "I'm fine," I said. "Just busy." He studied me for a moment, then nodded. "If you ever need anything, you call me. Don't wait." I told him I would. But I didn't. I didn't want to seem weak, didn't want him to think I couldn't handle it. I wanted to prove I could do this on my own. By my junior year, the pattern was clear. Henry would mention helping me. My father would intercept, insist he had it covered, and then I'd keep working myself to the bone while he took credit for supporting me. I started to notice the way he'd rewrite history at family gatherings, how a $20 grocery run he'd paid for would become a months-long financial rescue in his version of events. My mother never corrected him. She just smiled and changed the subject when I looked at her too long. I didn't confront it. I didn't have the energy, and part of me didn't want to believe it was as bad as it seemed. My father was proud, sure, but he wouldn't actually steal from me. He wouldn't take what Henry meant for me and keep it for himself. That didn't make sense. Then, halfway through my senior year, Henry called me. "I want to get you a car," he said. "Something reliable. You're going to need it after graduation, especially if you're heading to officer training." I told him that was too much, that I couldn't accept something like that. He laughed. "Emily, you've worked harder than anyone I know. Let me do this. You've earned it." I felt a knot in my chest, gratitude, disbelief, something close to relief. A car meant freedom. It meant I wouldn't have to borrow my roommate's beat-up sedan or take the bus to interviews. It meant one less thing to worry about. I told him yes. I thanked him. I felt, for the first time in years, like maybe things were going to get easier. A week later, my father called. "Your grandfather mentioned something about a car," he said. His tone was casual, but I could hear the edge underneath. "You don't need something flashy, Emily. That's not you. I'll handle it. Don't make a big deal out of this." I didn't argue. I was too tired to fight him, and I assumed if Henry had really bought the car, I'd know. I'd see paperwork, get a call, something. When nothing came, I figured the plan had changed. Maybe Henry reconsidered. Maybe my father talked him out of it. I didn't push. I graduated, packed my things, and moved on to the next phase. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I'd manage, like I always did. But somewhere in the back of my mind, a question lingered, one I didn't want to ask out loud. Where had the money gone? I finished my degree in 3.5 years, double majoring in political science and criminal justice, while maintaining my ROTC commitments. The day I graduated, my father stood in the crowd with my mother, both of them smiling, taking pictures, acting like they'd been part of the journey. Henry was there too, standing off to the side, hands in his pockets, watching me with quiet pride. He didn't need to make a scene. He never did. I went straight into officer training after graduation. The structure suited me: early mornings, clear expectations, a chain of command that made sense. I thrived in environments where effort translated directly into results. I ran faster, scored higher, pushed harder than most of the people around me. My instructors noticed. I got recommendations, earned respect, moved up. But the exhaustion didn't go away. I was still working side jobs when I could, still watching every dollar, still carrying the weight of years spent stretching too thin. I'd paid off my student loans faster than most, but it had cost me. I didn't have savings. I didn't have a safety net. I had discipline and not much else. Henry called me every few weeks. He'd ask how I was doing, if I needed anything, if the car was holding up. The first time he mentioned it, I heard of things. Take care of what things? Emily, don't make this complicated. You're fine. You're doing great. Let it go. I didn't let it go, but I didn't push either. I filed it away, added it to the growing list of things that didn't quite add up. My father's version of events never matched reality, but confronting him felt like stepping into quicksand, exhausting, pointless, something that would only pull me down. I kept my head down. I focused on my work. I told myself that whatever had happened with the car, it didn't matter. I was managing. I was fine. But I wasn't fine. I was angry. And I didn't even fully understand why. At family dinners, my father would hold court, telling stories about how much he'd sacrificed for me, how he'd supported me through college, how proud he was of everything I'd accomplished. My mother would nod along, adding small details that made his version sound more convincing. I'd sit there, quiet, watching them rewrite the past in real time. Henry would catch my eye sometimes, and I'd see something in his expression, concern, maybe, or frustration, but he never said anything in front of my parents. He played along, kept the peace, let my father have his moment. One night, after a particularly long dinner where my father had spent 20 minutes talking about how he'd kept me on track during college, Henry walked me to my car. It was borrowed, a friend's sedan that rattled when it hit 40. He looked at it for a long moment, then looked at me. "You're not driving what I bought you," he said quietly. I froze. "What?" "The car. You're not driving it." I didn't know what to say. I felt my throat tighten, felt the weight of years pressing down on me. "I don't have it," I said finally. "I never got it." Henry's jaw tightened. He didn't say anything for a long moment. Then he nodded, slow and deliberate. "I see." He didn't ask me what happened. He didn't need to. We both knew. He put a hand on my shoulder. "You've worked harder than you should have had to," he said. "I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner." I wanted to tell him it wasn't his fault. I wanted to tell him I was fine, that I'd managed, that it didn't matter. But I couldn't get the words out. I just nodded. He squeezed my shoulder once, then stepped back. "I'm proud of you, Emily. Don't forget that." I got in the car and sat there for a long time before I drove home. I felt something shifting inside me, something I couldn't name yet. It wasn't quite anger. It wasn't quite grief. It was the slow, terrible realization that I'd been lied to for years, and that the people who were supposed to protect me had been the ones taking from me instead. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every intercepted check, every deflected question, every time my father had smiled and told me he'd taken care of it. I thought about the jobs I'd worked, the shifts I'd pulled, the nights I'd gone without sleep because I thought I had to. Because I thought no one was helping me. But someone had been trying to help me. And my father had stolen it. I didn't cry. I didn't break down. I just lay there, cold and awake, understanding for the first time what betrayal actually felt like. The next morning, I called Henry. "I need to know," I said. "What exactly did you give my father?" There was a pause. Then Henry sighed. $50,000, he said. "Last year. For a car. I wanted you to have something reliable." $50,000. I closed my eyes. "And he told you I got it?" "He said he'd handle it. That you were busy with training, and he'd make sure it got to you." I never saw a dollar of it. Henry didn't respond right away. When he did, his voice was tight, controlled. "I'll deal with this." "No," I said. "I will." I didn't know how yet. But I knew I wasn't going to let this go. Not anymore. My military graduation was scheduled for mid-September, 3 months after that phone call with Henry. It was the kind of ceremony that mattered, formal, public, the culmination of years of work. My commissioning as a second lieutenant. I'd earned it. Every early morning run, every late-night study session, every moment I'd pushed through exhaustion had led to this. My parents drove up the day before. My father was in a good mood, talking about how proud he was, how he'd always known I'd make it. My mother smiled beside him, nodding along, playing her role. I didn't engage much. I'd spent the last 3 months keeping my distance, responding to their calls with short answers, avoiding dinners, finding excuses. They didn't seem to notice, or if they did, they didn't care enough to ask why. Henry flew in that morning. He'd insisted on being there, said he wouldn't miss it for anything. I met him at his hotel before the ceremony. He looked older than I remembered, a little thinner, but his eyes were sharp. He hugged me, held on a little longer than usual. "You ready?" he asked. "I think so." He smiled. "You've been ready for years, Emily. Today's just the part where everyone else figures it out." The ceremony itself was crisp, formal, everything I'd expected. I stood with the other newly commissioned officers, took my oath, felt the weight of the moment settle over me. When it was done, I found my family in the crowd. My father was grinning, shaking hands with people he didn't know, playing the proud parent. My mother stood beside him, quieter but smiling. Henry hung back, watching. We gathered afterward in the reception area, tables set up with punch and cookies, families taking pictures, officers congratulating each other. My father was in his element, talking loudly, making sure everyone knew I was his daughter. I stood next to him, smiling when I was supposed to, shaking hands, accepting congratulations. Then Henry walked over. He was carrying a small gift bag, something wrapped in tissue paper. He handed it to me. "For you," he said. "I know you've got everything you need, but I wanted you to have this anyway." I opened it. Inside was a keychain, simple, silver, with a small engraved plate that read, "Drive safe. Grandpa Henry." I looked up at him. He was smiling, but there was something careful in his expression, something deliberate. "Thank you," I said. He nodded. Then he turned to my father, his tone easy, conversational. "So, Emily," he said, looking back at me but speaking loud enough for my father to hear, "how's the car running? Still treating you well?" I felt the air shift. My father went still beside me. My mother's smile faltered. I stared at Henry. "What car?" His smile didn't change, but his eyes sharpened. He kept his gaze on me. "The one I bought you last year. The $50,000 I gave your father to get you something reliable." The noise around us seemed to drop away. I heard someone laugh at a nearby table. I heard the clink of glasses. But everything felt distant, muted, like I was underwater. I looked at my father. His face had gone pale. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Henry, what did you do with the money, Thomas?" Henry's voice was calm, measured, but there was steel underneath it. My mother looked down at the floor. My father's mouth worked, but no sound came out. People around us were starting to notice, starting to turn and look. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not anger. Not yet. Just clarity. "You took it," I said quietly. "You took it and you never told me." My father's face flushed. "Emily, it wasn't like that. You needed $50,000. I kept my voice low, controlled. "For what?" He didn't answer. He looked at Henry, then at my mother, then back at me. "We were going to pay it back," he said finally. "It was temporary." You weren't going to do anything," Henry said. His voice was still calm, but I could hear the edge in it now. "You lied to me. You lied to her. You took money that was meant for your daughter, and you kept it." My mother finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thomas, we should go." "No," I said. Both of them looked at me. "No. You don't get to leave." "Not yet." My father's jaw tightened. "Emily, don't do this here." "Do what?" "Ask you why you stole from me." I could feel people staring now, could feel the weight of their attention, but I didn't care. "I worked 2 jobs in college, Dad. I worked weekends, nights, every spare hour I had. I thought I was doing it because I had to. Because no one was helping me." "We were helping you, you weren't." My voice cracked, just slightly, and I hated it. "You were taking from me. You were letting me struggle while you kept what was mine." He didn't have an answer. He just stood there, red-faced, looking around at the people watching us. My mother's eyes were wet, but she didn't say anything. She just stood there, frozen. Henry stepped closer to me, his voice quiet. "Emily, we can finish this later." I shook my head. "No. I'm done finishing things later." I looked at my father. "I want to know what you spent it on." "It's complicated, it's not." He exhaled hard, rubbing his face with one hand. "Bills," he said finally. "Credit cards. The mortgage." We were behind. "I thought I could fix it before you found out." "Fix it?" I stared at him. "By stealing from me?" It wasn't stealing. It was he stopped, realizing how it sounded. "It was what?" I waited. He didn't answer. I looked at my mother. She was crying now, quiet tears running down her face. I felt something crack inside me. Not sympathy. Not forgiveness. Just exhaustion. "I'm done," I said. "I'm done pretending this is normal. I'm done making excuses for you." I looked at Henry. "If you ever want to help me again, you do it directly." No one else. Just me. Henry nodded. Done. I turned back to my parents. My father looked like he wanted to argue, to defend himself, but he didn't. He just stood there. My mother reached for my arm. Emily, please, I stepped back. I need you to leave. Emily, leave. They left. I watched them walk away, my father's shoulders tight, my mother's head down. I stood there in the middle of the reception hall, surrounded by people I barely knew, and I felt nothing. No relief. No anger. Just a hollow, aching clarity. Henry put a hand on my shoulder. You okay? I nodded. I wasn't, but I would be. Let's get out of here, he said. We left the reception together. Outside, the air was cool, the sun low in the sky. I stood on the steps of the building, looking out at the parking lot, at the rows of cars, at the world that suddenly felt different than it had an hour ago. I'm sorry, Henry said. I should have given it to you directly. I should have known. It's not your fault. It is. Partly. He sighed. I wanted to help. I just didn't think He stopped, shook his head. I didn't think he'd do that to you. I looked at him. I didn't either. We stood there for a long time, not saying anything. Finally, Henry spoke. What do you want to do? I didn't know. I didn't have an answer. All I knew was that something had shifted, something I couldn't take back. The relationship I'd had with my parents, the polite distance, the careful avoidance, it was over. Whatever came next would be different. It had to be. I want to move on, I said finally. I want to stop carrying this. Henry nodded. Then that's what you'll do. I believed him. For the first time in a long time, I believed that things could actually change. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, replaying the confrontation over and over. I kept hearing my father's voice, we were going to pay it back, and I kept seeing my mother's face, the way she'd looked at the ground instead of at me. I wanted to feel angry. I wanted to feel righteous, justified, vindicated. But mostly I just felt tired. I called Henry around 10. He picked up on the second ring. You doing okay? I don't know. I leaned back against the couch, closing my eyes. I keep thinking about all the times I could have asked. All the times I should have pushed back. This isn't on you, Emily. I know. But it feels like it should be. He was quiet for a moment. Your father made a choice. He made a lot of choices. You didn't make them for him. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. What did he say? After I left? Not much. I told him if he ever tried something like that again, I'd make sure everyone in the family knew exactly what kind of man he was. He didn't argue. And my mom, she cried, asked me not to cut them off completely. I told her that wasn't my decision, it was yours. I exhaled slowly. I don't want to cut them off. I just want them to stop lying. That's fair. Is it? I opened my eyes, staring at the ceiling. I feel like I'm being cruel. You're being honest. That's not the same thing. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that setting boundaries wasn't the same as abandoning people. But it felt like a thin line, one I wasn't sure how to walk. Over the next few days, I avoided my parents' calls. I didn't block them. I just didn't answer. My father left 2 voicemails, one defensive, one apologetic. My mother sent a handful of texts, short and careful, asking if we could talk. I read them. I didn't respond. I started my assignment at Fort Bragg a week later. The structure helped. I had a schedule, a routine, clear expectations. I worked long hours, threw myself into the job, and tried not to think about what I'd left behind. But the weight of it stayed with me. At night, lying in bed, I'd replay the scene from the graduation over and over, the look on my father's face, the silence from my mother, the way Henry had stood beside me without flinching. 3 weeks after the confrontation, my father called again. This time I answered. Emily. His voice was rough, strained. Can we talk? I didn't say anything right away. I just listened to him breathe on the other end of the line. I know you're angry, he said. I know I screwed up. But we're still family. That has to mean something. It does, I said quietly. That's why this hurts so much. He didn't respond. I could hear something in the background, a TV, maybe, or my mother moving around in the kitchen. I'm not asking you to forgive me, he said finally. I just want a chance to make this right. How? I don't know. But I'll figure it out. Dad, stop. I closed my eyes. You can't fix this by promising to do better. You've been promising that my whole life. I mean it this time. I'm sure you do. But I can't keep believing you just because you say the words. There was a long silence. Then he said, "So what do you want from me?" "I want you to tell the truth. I want you to stop pretending you've been supporting me when you haven't. I want you to stop taking credit for things you didn't do." I paused. "And I want you to pay Henry back." "Emily, I can't. Then we don't have anything else to talk about." I hung up. My hands were shaking. I sat there for a long time, staring at the phone, waiting for him to call back. He didn't. Henry called me that weekend. "Your father reached out," he said. "Told me you asked him to pay me back. Is that a problem?" "No. It's fair." He paused. "But I don't think he can do it. Not anytime soon." "I know. So what happens now?" I didn't have an answer. I didn't know if I wanted them back in my life, didn't know if I could trust them again. All I knew was that I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I couldn't keep smoothing over their mistakes just to keep the peace. "I don't know," I said finally. "I guess we'll see." Henry didn't push. He never did. "You're doing the right thing," he said. "It doesn't feel like it now, but you are." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that standing up for myself wasn't the same as tearing my family apart. But I wasn't sure yet. I wasn't sure of anything. Over the next few months, my parents tried. My father called once a week, awkward and careful, asking how I was doing, telling me about work, about the house, about small things that didn't matter. My mother sent cards, birthday, holidays, random Tuesdays, each one signed with love, Mom, and nothing else. I didn't respond to most of them. I didn't know what to say. Henry stayed close. He called, visited when he could, made sure I knew I wasn't alone. He never brought up my parents unless I did, never pushed me to reconcile or to cut them off. He just listened. I started to understand, slowly, what he'd been trying to teach me all along. That boundaries weren't cruelty. That protecting yourself wasn't the same as punishing someone else. That sometimes the strongest thing you could do was refuse to carry someone else's weight. I didn't forgive my father. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I stopped waiting for him to fix it. I stopped waiting for an apology that would make it all make sense. I just moved forward. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough. A year later, my parents' financial situation had gotten worse. I heard about it through Henry. My father had asked him for a loan, something to help cover the mortgage. Henry had refused. My mother called me a week after that, her voice tight and desperate, asking if I could help. I told her no. It wasn't easy. It didn't feel good. But I knew that if I gave them money, I'd be stepping back into the same pattern, the one where I sacrificed, and they took, and nothing ever changed. So I held firm. My father tried a different approach a few weeks later. He called me, his tone softer, more vulnerable than I'd ever heard it. "Emily, I know I don't deserve to ask. But we're in trouble. Real trouble. The bank's threatening foreclosure. Your mother's been crying every night. I don't know what else to do." I sat there, phone pressed to my ear, and I felt something twist inside me. Not guilt. Not quite. Just the ache of watching someone you used to love drown, knowing you couldn't save them. "I'm sorry," I said. "But I can't help you." "Emily, please, you had $50,000, Dad. You had it, and you spent it. That's not my fault. I made a mistake. You made a choice." My voice was steady now, clear. "You chose to take what was mine. You chose to lie about it. And now you're living with the consequences. I'm not going to fix that for you." He didn't say anything for a long time. Then, quietly, "You've gotten hard." "No," I said. "I've gotten smart." I hung up. I sat there in the silence of my apartment, feeling the weight of what I'd just done. It didn't feel like victory. It didn't feel like justice. It just felt like survival. Henry called me the next day. "Your father told me you refused to help." I did. "Good." I blinked. "Good." "Emily, you don't owe them anything. Not after what they did." He paused. "I know it doesn't feel that way. I know it feels like you're being cruel. But you're not. You're protecting yourself. And that's not something you should apologize for." I closed my eyes. It doesn't feel like protecting myself. It feels like watching them fall apart. They're not falling apart because of you. They're falling apart because of choices they made. You didn't cause this. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that I wasn't responsible for fixing their mistakes. But the guilt lingered, a low hum in the back of my mind that wouldn't go away. Over the next few months, I heard updates through Henry. My parents had downsized, moved into a smaller house. My father had taken a second job. My mother had stopped sending cards. They were managing, barely, but they were managing. I didn't reach out. I didn't check in. I just kept moving forward, focusing on my career, on building the life I'd always wanted. I got promoted to first lieutenant 6 months ahead of schedule. I earned commendations, respect from my peers, recognition from my superiors. People started to see me the way Henry always had, as someone capable, someone strong. And slowly, the guilt started to fade. Not completely, but enough. I ran into an old family friend at a coffee shop one afternoon. She asked how my parents were doing, and I told her the truth, that we weren't really in contact. She looked surprised, a little uncomfortable. "That's hard," she said. "Family's important." "It is," I agreed. "But so is self-respect." She didn't know what to say to that. Neither did I, really. But I meant it. That night, I called Henry. "Do you think I'm doing the right thing?" I asked. "I think you're doing the only thing you can do," he said. "You're protecting yourself. You're refusing to let them take from you again. That's not wrong, Emily. That's survival. It doesn't feel like enough. It is." His voice was firm, certain. "You don't owe them forgiveness. You don't owe them a second chance. You don't owe them anything." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "Thank you." "For what?" "For believing me. For not making me feel crazy." "You're not crazy," he said. "You're just finally seeing things clearly." I hung up and sat there, staring at the wall, and I realized he was right. For the first time in my life, I wasn't making excuses for my parents. I wasn't rewriting their behavior to make it easier to accept. I was just seeing them for who they were: flawed, selfish, human. And I was choosing not to carry their weight anymore. 2 years after the confrontation at my graduation, my mother reached out. It was a short email, carefully worded, asking if we could meet for coffee. No drama, no demands. Just a request. I thought about it for a week before I responded. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to let the distance stay intact. But another part of me, smaller, quieter, wanted to see if anything had changed. We met at a cafe near the base. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table, hands wrapped around a mug. She looked older, thinner, tired. I sat down across from her. "Hi, Mom." "Hi, Emily." Her voice was soft, tentative. "Thank you for coming." I nodded. I didn't know what to say. She looked down at her coffee. "I know I don't deserve your time. I know I've hurt you. But I wanted to tell you." She stopped, her voice catching. "I wanted to tell you I'm sorry." I watched her. She was crying, quiet tears slipping down her face. I didn't reach for her. I didn't comfort her. I just waited. "I should have stood up to your father," she said. "I should have told you the truth. I should have." She shook her head. "I should have done a lot of things. And I didn't. And I'm sorry." I took a breath. "Why didn't you?" "Because I was scared. Because I didn't want to admit what he'd done. Because I thought if I just kept quiet, it would go away." She looked up at me, her eyes red. "I was wrong. And I know that doesn't fix anything. But I needed you to know." I sat there, feeling the weight of her words settle over me. It wasn't enough. It didn't undo the years of lies, the stolen money, the betrayal. But it was something. "Where's Dad?" I asked. "He didn't come." "He wanted to, but," she hesitated. "I told him not to. I told him you needed to hear from me first." I nodded. "Is he still angry?" "No. He's ashamed. He won't admit it, but I can see it." She paused. "We're not in a goody place, Emily. Financially, emotionally. But we're managing. And I'm not asking you to fix that. I just wanted you to know that I see what we did. I see what I did. And I'm sorry." I looked at her for a long moment. She looked smaller than I remembered, worn down by years of enabling and avoiding. I didn't feel anger anymore. I didn't feel much of anything except a dull, distant sadness. I appreciate you saying that, I said finally. But I need you to understand something. I'm not going to pretend it didn't happen. I'm not going to go back to how things were. I know. And I'm not going to help you financially. Not now. Maybe not ever. She nodded, wiping her eyes. I understand. If you want to be part of my life, it has to be honest. No more covering for Dad. No more rewriting history. Just the truth. Okay. Her voice was barely a whisper. Okay. We sat there in silence for a while. The coffee shop hummed around us, conversations, laughter, the hiss of the espresso machine. Normal life, continuing. Can I ask you something? She said eventually. Sure. Do you hate us? I thought about it. Really thought about it. No, I said. I don't hate you. But I don't trust you either. And I don't know if I ever will again. She nodded slowly. That's fair. We finished our coffee. She asked about my work, and I gave her the basics, enough to be polite, not enough to let her back in completely. When we left, she hugged me. I let her, but I didn't hug back. Not yet. Can we do this again? She asked. Maybe in a few months? Maybe, I said. We'll see. She nodded and walked away. I watched her go, feeling something shift inside me. Not forgiveness. Not reconciliation. Just the smallest crack in the wall I'd built. I called Henry that night. I saw my mother today. How'd it go? She apologized. Said she should have stood up to my father. Do you believe her? I think she means it. But I don't know if that changes anything. Henry was quiet for a moment. It doesn't have to change anything. You get to decide what you're willing to give them. No one else. I don't want to shut them out forever, I said. But I don't want to go back to how things were either. Then don't. You set the terms. You decide how much access they get. And if they can't respect that, they don't get any. I nodded. That feels right. Good. Then trust that. Over the next year, I saw my mother 3 more times. Short meetings, carefully neutral territory. She never brought my father. She never asked for money. She just talked, listened, and slowly, very slowly, we began to rebuild something. Not the relationship we'd had before. Something smaller, more cautious, built on honesty instead of obligation. My father reached out once, a long email full of apologies and explanations. I read it twice, then filed it away. I wasn't ready to respond. Maybe I never would be. But I kept the door open, just a crack, in case someday I was. Henry watched from a distance, never pushing, never judging. He just let me figure it out at my own pace. And that was the greatest gift he could have given me, the space to decide for myself what forgiveness looked like, if it existed at all. 3 years after the confrontation, I stood at another ceremony, this time a promotion to captain. It was smaller than my commissioning, more subdued, but it mattered just as much. I'd earned it through hard work, through proving myself again and again in a system that didn't hand out recognition lightly. Henry was there, sitting in the front row, his face lined with pride. My mother was there too, sitting toward the back alone. I'd invited her a month before, told her she could come if she wanted. She'd accepted quietly, gratefully, without asking if my father could join. She was learning. After the ceremony, Henry hugged me. Captain Carter, he said, smiling. Has a nice ring to it. Thanks, Grandpa. He handed me an envelope. For you. No middleman this time. I opened it. Inside was a check for $25,000, made out directly to me. A note was clipped to it. For the car you never got. Buy something you actually want. Henry the First looked up at him, my throat tight. You don't have to do this. I know. But I want to. He squeezed my shoulder. You've earned more than I'll ever be able to give you, Emily. This is just a start. I hugged him, holding on longer than I usually did. Thank you. For everything. Don't thank me. Just keep being who you are. My mother approached carefully, standing a few feet away, waiting for permission. I nodded, and she stepped closer. Congratulations, she said. Her voice caught. You look so strong. Thanks, Mom. She glanced at Henry, then back at me. Your father wanted me to tell you he's proud. He knows he can't be here, but he wanted you to know. I nodded. I didn't know what to say to that. Part of me wanted to tell her it didn't matter, that his pride meant nothing after what he'd done. But another part of me, smaller, quieter, appreciated her telling me. It wasn't much. But it was honest. How is he? I asked. He's managing. Working a lot. She hesitated. He's trying, Emily. In his own way. That's good. We stood there in awkward silence for a moment. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out a small, wrapped box. I got you something. Nothing big. She handed it to me. Just something I thought you'd like. I unwrapped it. Inside was a simple silver bracelet with a single engraved charm, strength. I know it's not much, she said quickly. But I saw it and I thought of you. You've always been the strongest person I know. I looked at her. She was crying again, but trying to hide it. I slipped the bracelet on. Thank you, Mom. I love it. She smiled, relieved, and stepped back. I'll let you get back to your friends. I just wanted to be here. I'm glad you came. She nodded and walked away. I watched her go, feeling something unfamiliar, not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the beginning of it. Henry stood beside me. You doing okay? Yeah. I think I am. She's trying. I know. It's just I paused. It's hard to forget. You don't have to forget. You just have to decide if you want to move forward. I looked at him. Do you think I should? I think you should do whatever feels right to you. Not to me. Not to them. To you. I nodded. That was the answer I needed. Later that night, I sat in my apartment with the check from Henry on the table in front of me. $25,000. Enough to buy a car. Enough to start saving seriously. Enough to build the life I'd always wanted. I thought about my father, about the $50,000 he'd stolen, about the years I'd spent working myself to exhaustion while he took credit for supporting me. I thought about my mother, about the way she'd looked at the ground during my graduation, unable to meet my eyes. And I thought about where I was now, Captain Emily Carter, respected, independent, strong. I'd built this life without them. I'd built it despite them. And that was something no one could take from me. I picked up my phone and texted Henry, "Thank you. I'm going to buy something practical. Maybe a Honda." He responded a minute later, "Your choice. Just make sure it's reliable. You've got places to go." I smiled. He was right. I did have places to go. And for the first time in my life, I knew I'd get there on my own terms. 5 years after the betrayal, I'd built a life I was proud of. I'd been promoted to major, had commanded a company, earned respect from people who didn't hand it out easily. I'd bought a house, paid off my student loans, started saving for retirement. I'd built something solid, something that couldn't be taken from me. Henry was still a constant presence. He'd slowed down a little, moved into a smaller place, but he was sharp as ever. We talked once a week, saw each other every few months. He never brought up my parents unless I did, never pushed me toward reconciliation or away from it. He just let me figure it out. My mother and I had settled into a cautious rhythm. We met for lunch every few months, kept the conversations light, avoided topics that might reopen old wounds. She never asked for money. She never made excuses for my father. She just showed up, consistently, quietly, and slowly earned back tiny pieces of trust. My father was a different story. I'd seen him twice in 5 years, once at a family funeral, once at a birthday party for a cousin. Both times, we'd been polite, distant, careful. He tried to talk to me at the birthday party, pulled me aside and told me he was sorry, that he'd made mistakes, that he hoped someday I could forgive him. I'd looked at him and said, maybe someday. But I didn't know if I meant it. He'd aged badly. The years had worn him down, too much work, too much stress, too much pride with nowhere to put it. He looked smaller than I remembered, less certain. Part of me felt sorry for him, but most of me just felt tired. I didn't hate him. I didn't even really think about him most days, but I was. I felt something crack inside me, something I'd been holding together for years. What can I do? Just keep being you. Keep building your life. That's all I've ever wanted. We talked for another hour. He told me about the treatment plan, about his will, about practical things that needed handling. He was calm, organized, prepared. That was Henry, always prepared. When we hung up, I sat in the dark of my living room and cried. Not for the years I'd lost with my parents. Not for the money that had been stolen. Just for the man who'd believed in me when no one else had, who'd stood beside me when it mattered, who'd taught me what integrity looked like. I called my mother the next day. Did you know about Grandpa Henry? Yes. He told us last week. How's Dad taking it? She was quiet for a moment. Not well. She paused. He's been thinking a lot about how things ended between you two. Between me and Grandpa? Between you and your father. I didn't say anything. He wants to see you, Emily. Before, she stopped. He wants to make things right. I don't know if that's possible. I know. But maybe you could try. I thought about it. I thought about my father, aging and worn down, carrying the weight of what he'd done. I thought about Henry, facing the end with the same quiet dignity he'd shown his whole life. And I thought about myself, what I wanted, what I needed, what I could live with. I'll think about it, I said finally. That's all I'm asking. 2 weeks later, I drove to my parents' house. It was smaller than the one I'd grown up in, a modest ranch style in a quiet neighborhood. My father was in the garage when I arrived, organizing tools, pretending he hadn't been waiting for me. Emily. He straightened, wiping his hands on his jeans. Thanks for coming. I nodded. We stood there awkwardly for a moment, then he gestured toward the house. You want to come in? I'm fine out here. He nodded, accepting that. We sat on the porch steps side by side, not quite touching. Your mother said Henry's sick, I said. Yeah, it's bad. His voice was rough. I've been thinking about him a lot. He stopped, cleared his throat. About what I did. I didn't respond. I just waited. I was wrong, he said finally. I was wrong to take that money. I was wrong to lie to you. I was wrong about a lot of things. He looked at me, his eyes red. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. What I did to you. What I took from you. I studied his face. He looked older, sadder, like the years had finally caught up with him. What changed? I asked. Watching Henry get sick. Realizing, he exhaled shakily. Realizing I might not have much time left either. And knowing that if I died tomorrow, my daughter would barely know me. Because of choices I made. I felt something twist in my chest. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But something softer than anger. I'm not asking you to forget, he said. I'm just asking for a chance. To be part of your life. Even just a little. I looked out at the street, at the neat rows of houses, at the ordinary world continuing around us. I don't know if I can trust you again, I said quietly. I don't know if I want to. I know. But I'm willing to try. Slowly. On my terms. He nodded, relief washing over his face. That's more than I deserve. Probably, I agreed. We sat there for a while longer, not saying much, just existing in the same space. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. It was just a door, opened a crack, letting in the smallest sliver of light. When I left, my father hugged me. I let him, but I didn't hug back. Not yet. Maybe someday. Henry died 6 months later, peacefully, in his sleep. I was with him the night before, sitting beside his bed, holding his hand. He was weak but lucid, his mind still sharp even as his body failed. I'm proud of you, he said, his voice barely a whisper. You know that, right? I know, Grandpa. You built a good life. A strong life. You didn't let them break you. I squeezed his hand. Because of you. He smiled. No. Because of you. I just reminded you what you already had. We sat in silence for a while. Then he said, Your father came by yesterday. I looked up surprised. He did. Yeah. We talked. Made peace, I think. As much as we could. He paused. He's trying, Emily. He's not good at it. But he's trying. I know. Give him a chance. Not for him. For you. So you don't spend the rest of your life carrying anger. I nodded, my throat tight. I will. Good. He closed his eyes, exhausted. That's all I needed to hear. He died the next morning. I got the call from the hospice nurse at 6 a.m. I didn't cry right away. I just sat there, feeling the weight of his absence settle over me like a blanket. The funeral was small, dignified, exactly what Henry would have wanted. My parents were there, sitting quietly in the back. My father cried during the eulogy. My mother held his hand. I stood at the front, watching them, and I felt something shift inside me, not forgiveness, not completely, but understanding. They were flawed, broken people who'd made terrible choices. But they were also human. And they were trying. After the service, my father approached me. His face was red, his eyes swollen. "I'm sorry," he said. "For everything. For all of it." I looked at him. "I know. Can we?" He stopped, struggled to find the words. "Can we try to be a family again? I know it won't be like it was. But maybe something." I thought about Henry, about his final words, about the life I'd built without bitterness. "Yeah," I said. "Maybe something." He nodded, relief flooding his face. My mother joined us, and the three of us stood there in the parking lot of the funeral home, trying to figure out what came next. It wasn't a perfect ending. It wasn't a happy reunion. But it was honest. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough. A year after Henry's death, I stood in my office at the base, looking at the photo on my desk. It was from my commissioning ceremony, me in uniform, Henry beside me, both of us smiling. He'd given me that photo a week after the confrontation with my parents, told me to keep it as a reminder of who I was. I'd kept it. Through every move, every promotion, every difficult moment. It sat on my desk, a constant presence, a reminder that I'd earned everything I had. My parents and I had settled into something resembling a relationship. We had dinner once a month, kept conversations light, avoided the past unless it was necessary. My father was different now, quieter, humbler, less interested in being right than in being present. My mother was warmer, more open, willing to admit when she was wrong. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of tension, still old wounds that flared up unexpectedly. But we were managing. We were trying. I'd used part of Henry's inheritance to set up a scholarship fund in his name, money for young women pursuing military careers who needed financial support. It felt right, felt like a way to honor what he'd done for me by helping others the way he'd helped me. My father had asked, cautiously, if he could contribute. I'd said yes. It was a small amount, nothing compared to what Henry had given, but it was something. A gesture. An acknowledgement. I'd also finally bought a car with the money Henry had given me, a sensible sedan, nothing flashy, exactly what he would have recommended. Every time I drove it, I thought of him. Every time I started the engine, I remembered his words, "You've got places to go." He'd been right. I did have places to go. And I'd gotten there on my own terms, with my own strength, built from the ground up. One evening, my father called. "Emily, can I ask you something?" "Sure. Do you think you'll ever forgive me?" "Really forgive me?" I thought about it. I thought about the years of anger, the betrayal, the slow, painful process of rebuilding trust. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Maybe. Someday. But it doesn't matter as much as it used to." "What do you mean?" "I mean I've stopped waiting for an apology that makes it all okay. I've stopped needing you to fix it. I've just moved on." He was quiet for a long moment. "That's probably the best I can hope for." "Yeah, probably." We talked for a few more minutes, then said goodbye. I hung up and sat there, looking at Henry's photo, and I realized something. I'd spent so long focused on what my parents had taken from me that I'd almost missed what I'd gained: strength, independence, clarity about who I was and what I deserved. The betrayal had hurt. It had changed me. But it hadn't broken me. If anything, it had made me stronger. I thought about the lieutenant I'd been 5 years ago, exhausted, overworked, desperate to prove herself. And I thought about the major I was now, confident, respected, secure in who I'd become. The lesson wasn't just about money. It was about boundaries. My father had thought taking from me kept him in control. But all it did was prove that strength comes from standing firm, even when it means standing alone. I'd stood alone. And I'd built something worth keeping. I picked up my phone and texted my mother, "Dinner next week?" She responded immediately, "I'd love that." I smiled. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. It was just forward motion, one small step at a time. And that was enough. I turned back to my desk, to the stack of reports waiting for my signature, to the work that gave my life structure and meaning. Outside, The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. I had places to go, and I was finally completely on my way. I received the promotion to lieutenant colonel on a cold morning in March, 7 years after that confrontation at my graduation. The ceremony was larger this time, more formal, with senior officers I'd worked under and young lieutenants I'd mentored filling the chairs. I stood at attention as the colonel read my commendation, listing achievements that felt both mine and somehow separate from me: awards, successful operations, leadership evaluations that used words like exemplary and distinguished. My parents were there. Both of them. Sitting together in the middle section, dressed carefully, my father in a suit I'd never seen before, my mother with her hair done professionally. They looked nervous, like they weren't sure they belonged. Maybe they weren't. But they'd come. That counted for something. After the ceremony, my father approached first. He'd learned to wait, to let me set the pace. "Congratulations, Lieutenant Colonel Carter." He said my rank carefully, with respect, like he was trying the words out for the first time. "Thanks, Dad. Your mother and I are really proud." He paused, glancing back at her. "We know we don't have the right to be, but we are." I looked at him. The years had continued to wear him down. His hair was completely gray now, his shoulders slightly stooped. But there was something different in his eyes, something clearer, less defensive. "You have the right," I said. "You're my father. That doesn't go away." His eyes got wet. He nodded quickly, looking away. "I appreciate that." My mother hugged me, held on just a little longer than usual. "You look so official," she said, smiling. "So important." "I'm just doing my job." "No." She pulled back, looking at me seriously. "You're doing more than that. You're doing what you always said you'd do. You're being exactly who you wanted to be." We went to lunch afterward, the three of us, at a restaurant near the base. It was easier than it used to be. The silences weren't as heavy. The conversations didn't require as much careful navigation. We talked about my next assignment, about their plans to finally take a vacation, about small, normal things that families discuss. My father ordered coffee, stirred it slowly, then looked up at me. "I've been going to therapy," he said suddenly. "For about 2 years now." I set down my fork. Yeah, your mother suggested it. After Henry died, after he stopped, cleared his throat. After I realized how much I'd screwed up. I needed help figuring out why I did what I did. "And did you?" "Figure it out." He nodded slowly. "Some of it. Not all of it. But enough to know that it was never about you. It was about me feeling like I wasn't enough. Wasn't successful enough. Wasn't important enough. Your grandfather cast a big shadow, and I spent my whole life trying to step out of it by tearing other people down." He looked directly at me. "Including you. Especially you." My mother reached over and took his hand. He squeezed it, grateful for the anchor. "I'm not asking you to feel sorry for me," he continued. "I'm just telling you because I want you to know I'm trying to understand it. So I don't," his voice cracked slightly. "So I don't keep hurting people." I sat there, processing. This was the most honest he'd ever been with me. The most vulnerable. "I appreciate you telling me that," I said finally. "I've also been paying Henry back. What I owe him." Owed him. He corrected himself, acknowledging the past tense. "I set up a payment plan with the estate. It'll take me years, maybe the rest of my life, but I'm doing it. $50 a month. It's not much, but it's something," I said. "It's something," he agreed. We finished lunch. When the check came, my father reached for it. I let him. It was a small thing, symbolic, but I could see it mattered to him. In the parking lot, before we parted ways, my mother pulled me aside. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For giving us another chance. For not shutting us out completely. I know we didn't deserve it." I thought about Henry, about his final words to me. About giving my father a chance not for him, but for me. So I wouldn't carry anger forever. "Everyone deserves a chance to do better," I said. "As long as they're actually trying." "We are," she said. "I promise we are." I hugged her. This time I hugged back. That night, alone in my quarters, I pulled out the box I kept in my closet. Inside were things from Henry, Letters he'd written me over the years, the photo from my commissioning, the keychain he'd given me at my graduation. I ran my thumb over the engraving. Drive safe. Grandpa Henry. I thought about the car I'd never gotten, about the $50,000 that had set everything in motion. If my father hadn't stolen it, would things be different? Would I have a relationship with my parents that wasn't built on the bones of betrayal and slow, painful reconstruction? Maybe. Maybe not. But I realized something sitting there, surrounded by memories of the man who'd believed in me most. The betrayal had hurt. It had changed the trajectory of my life, forced me to build everything alone, taught me that trust was something you earned slowly and lost quickly. But it had also made me who I was. Strong. Independent. Clear about my boundaries and unwilling to compromise them. I'd learned that you could love people and still protect yourself from them. That forgiveness wasn't about forgetting, it was about refusing to let someone else's mistakes define your future. I put the box away and looked at myself in the mirror. Lieutenant Colonel Emily Carter. A woman who'd earned every rank, every commendation, every ounce of respect. A woman who'd been stolen from and had still built something worth keeping. My father was trying. My mother was trying. And I was letting them, not because they deserved it, but because I deserved peace. That was enough. That was everything. I picked up my phone and texted my father, "Thank you for lunch. And for being honest." He responded a minute later, "Thank you for showing up. It means more than you know." I smiled and set the phone down. Outside my window, the base was quiet, the evening settling in. Tomorrow, I'd start preparing for my new assignment. Tomorrow, I'd keep building the life I'd fought for. But tonight, I just sat with the peace of knowing I'd survived the worst thing my family had done to me and come out stronger on the other side. Thanks for watching. If this hit close to home, tap like and subscribe for more real stories about boundaries, family, and self-respect. Question for you. Have you ever discovered a hidden betrayal, money, credit, or support that never reached you? If you confronted it, how did your family respond? What boundary would you set today if you knew no one would guilt you for it? Should parents ever be given a second chance after financial betrayal? Why or why not? And for the grandparents out there, what's the best way to help directly without middlemen? Share your answers in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. Your story might help someone else draw their line.